Now, I want to go over these comments. I haven't had a chance to look at them, so if there's anything offensive, I want to apologize beforehand. Okay.
Okay, that's
All right.
okay.
So, all right. Osborne Cox says, "Nope, you was wrong, kiddo." Talking about giants. People want to believe that giants were 450 feet tall because they read this in the book of Enoch, and they want to believe Enoch, but they don't want to believe the Bible. That's really, it sounds harsh, but that's the reality. They don't want to trust God. They want to trust, I don't know what, themselves, I guess. I don't know. Mr. Info says, yes, after the flood, why there was a flood, the DNA line was tainted. Well, that's not why Genesis 6 says. Okay, so I went through this in that video, in the very video that you're commenting on. Okay, and so why did God destroy the earth? I just kind of wonder, and I hate to be harsh about this, but this is why I wonder, do people even read the Bible? Because it's clear as it can be. Like verse 5, it says, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Now get this, hold on, if you didn't catch it yet, keep listening. And it grieved the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for repent of me that I have made them. So it's as clear as it gets. The reason God destroyed the world by the flood was because of man, because his heart was only evil continually, because of the human heart, clear as day. And how in the world these people aren't seeing it? And then if you just take 5 minutes to read Genesis chapter 6, that's all it takes, 5 minutes. You should be able to see for yourself that this is talking about man. God destroyed the world because of man. And it gets reiterated in the New Testament, and I don't want to go over that right now. I just want to...
Can you show me Genesis 6:1?
Yeah, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. So you understand that, right? So a daughter belongs to her father until her father gives her in marriage to another man.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And then in Genesis 6:3,
and the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh.
Oh, okay. And in verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days. Why, if it's not important, the giants, why the Bible is mentioning that there was giants in the earth in those days?
Well, I think it's...
And also after that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think that everything that is written in the Bible is important, and I don't understand if there is any connection with the giants and this situation of the flood. Why is there mentioned the giants in the earth in those days and also after that?
Yeah, Yes, that's a great question. So, look, if God destroyed the earth because of giants, for one, the Bible ought to say, hey, I'm going to destroy the earth because there are giants in it. And it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that at all. Very clear. It's because of the human heart. Now, this mention of giants is to give a context of the time that existed up until the end of the flood and what was happening during that time. So you have a world, if you can understand that the world was full of giant people, and these giant people were of great stature, and that uh, they must have been revered and looked upon as gods, and they must have had extreme power and a huge following. All right, because people are going to feel like they're protected because this man is as big as any man in our land. He's the biggest man, and his all his buddies are big men, and there must have been a bunch of them. So I'm sure they had a big, huge following. And I've said this before. I think there was 25 billion people, over 3 times as many people living at that time than there is today. And I only base that upon the fact that people were living much longer, meaning people were having many more babies than what they're having now. Population would have exploded through the roof, much greater than what we're seeing today. So, anyways, but regardless of how many people, that's kind of off topic, but it's there to give you an idea of what was happening in the world. You have giant men, and it's not just that they were giants. What does it say in verse 2? It says, the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. So you not only have giants, but you have men who are having several wives. You see that we have laws against that today. Imagine if there was no laws against it. And imagine that you had these giant men who there's no way you could force a law upon these people. They were too big, too strong, too tough, too much power. There's no way you can enforce any sort of law against them having 500 wives, right? So these guys were as corrupt as it gets, and as powerful and as strong as could possibly be. So this is just to give you an idea of what was happening during that time before the flood. If you put all the pieces together, it's quite simple to imagine. I think that they're in, but don't lose fact of the fact that there were giants before the flood, but there were also giants after the flood. And in no way is there a scripture here that is suggesting God destroyed the world because of giants. Okay.
Okay, but
Does that make sense? I mean, that just that mention of the giants being there and afterwards just gives you an idea of what it was like during that time.
okay.
So it is important. You're right. It's important, and it should be important. But it's not the reason why God destroyed the earth.
Okay. Maybe men in those days were following giants like gods, like they were gods.
Well, you look at what's happening today. Don't people follow? Who's that soccer star for Portugal? I mean, you look at the athletes, superstar, basketball, football, baseball. They look at these guys. I mean, people even look at
like stars, like idols.
Idols, yeah. They worship them. Yeah.
Yes.
And so you imagine somebody's 12 feet tall, twice as big and twice as strong. Yeah, yeah. That's what I imagine.
And do you have any theory about where those giants came from?
Oh, well, I think it's pretty obvious. I guess if you sort of grew up around farm people that had horses and ponies and so on and so forth, or even dog breeders. People breed animals a certain way so that they can develop, um, hybrids, if you will. Like, for example, you have big dogs. So if you're in the market to sell big dogs, you want to mate big dogs with big dogs to make a bigger dog, or small dogs with small dogs to make small dogs. That's why we got really small dogs and we got really big dogs. Same thing with horses, and same thing with ponies, and so on. Horses are ponies, but you understand what I'm saying. If you want a thoroughbred, then you have a specific way of breeding your horses to develop that perfect thoroughbred, if you will, that you're going to use for training and racing and all that sort of stuff. You breed a certain way. And so now apply that to man. Let's say you wanted let's say you were a tall man and you wanted your son to be king, or have power or what have you. You'll find yourself a tall woman, breed with her, and you're sure to have a big baby. All right. And then if you have like a hierarchy or whatever, you know uh, uh, let's say your whole family is you know believes in that sort of idea that they're going to become powerful if they breed their children to become big men, and they train them and all that sort of stuff. They develop them uh, into giants, into big men. Then you just sort of follow that pattern of breeding your big people with big women, in a sense. Your tall men and tall women, and they'll have tall babies, or babies that'll grow up to be tall. All right, and then the next thing you know, if you only did that, then you would have a whole entire community or family, if you will, of tall people, which is tall people are giants. And it's very, very clear here, like in Deuteronomy chapter 1, the people is greater and taller than we, the cities are great and walled up to heaven, and moreover, we have seen the sons of the Anakims there. So this is all talking about giants. It's very clear that giants are taller than regular men.
Do you believe in any kind of genetic manipulation in those times?
Well, if you want to consider breeding genetic manipulation, sure.
Okay.
But I guess it would have to define how are we going to define genetic manipulation?
I think in my opinion, I think that in those times they were much more intelligent and smart than we are today.
Yeah, like so.
And since we can read in Ecclesiastes that there's nothing new under the sun, and today there are a lot of genetic manipulation in vegetables, in animals, in human beings. So I assume that maybe in those times they were doing genetic manipulation, and maybe that's why God says that the the man was weak in his heart continually, something like that.
Yeah, in Genesis 6.
Yes.
The imagination of his heart was only evil continually, yeah.
Continually. Because when we read in Genesis 1, the creation, it's also everything was made after his kind. The seed after his kind, and produce things after his kind. And okay.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
No. Now maybe you're right. Maybe they had a way of pinpointing specific genes to make people taller.
Taller, okay.
Maybe, but it could also be done just by having a tall boy having, you know, relations with a tall girl. Either way, it works, right?
Okay.